Ask Sky how to do it. Yeah, Shlomo, I think we
No,
trust.
I just got the recording. I just got it started. It's starting. It says recording. That's a good sign. Okay.
So how can we see plants here?
No, that's Zachariah.
Oh, that's Zachariah.
Meaning that's plugging in from the same account. Also. Yeah.
Flowers for Shabbos.
Okay. Call the Shabbos Kodesh. We're gonna start. See, Jordan's on. Okay, that's good.
Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom. How are you?
Good, thank God.
I like the sphere here. Is that a beard or a sphere hair? I don't know. Let's look more hairy today.
Spirit hair. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if you have the Sefer, but we're going to try to learn a little bit from Kisari. That's try to understand this LP. Well, but I'm going to try to understand LP Chassidus. So see if you can make a kasher. You can make a connection between all these. You consider it. Maybe just sit on this side. What after?
Yeah, you can sit there.
No, you can sit also.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I don't consider. You can sit wherever you want.
Okay.
Okay. So to understand a little bit, what is the idea of the goyim? And I'll be previous. What is the idea of a goyim? So we know there's a lot of Amar Chazal on the goyim. Why didn't the goyim come? Because of horror, gas. There's a lot of different things about this. Metzora, the Metzora. Let's see, I'll be previous. Where's the shayrish of nega? And how do we have some type of taken from this? Let's see, obviously it's going to be the same. The previous is not different than what it says in Negla, but just one complement to each other to understand it from a little bit of a deeper perspective. So
Can everyone hear over there?
Everyone here?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. So we'll learn Simon Yud Gimel. So the Torah tells us Adam ki b'psari. So first of all, there's a chiddush here. What's the first chiddush? First chiddush is that it's Adam. That we don't find generally when the Torah wants to describe an event or a person, when it wants to describe it, usually the Torah describes it ish. That Adam is a very unusual phrase. It only appears a few times in the Torah when the Torah is giving halakas, and it gives a description. It says Adam is only a few times. You have it when it comes Adam Kyamas Mahayel, so that's the laws of Tumatar. It comes with the idea of Adam, and then we had a few weeks ago Parshas Vayikra is Adam Kiyakim Rikem. It's an unusual statement when it comes to the idea of Adam, because Adam is also the name of Adam Rishon, but it's a name klali. It's general. Adam refers to humans. It's not when it comes to together when it talks about ish, and when it's already a more specific thing. It's like Adam is more shema klal, the general. Adam is a general. Not Adam versus ha-Adam. That could be that Atom Kurim Adam. But this like the katz of Adam represents like it represents like a klolistic, a general thing. So sometimes when one wants to talk about, that, let's say, for example, karbonis, when it says Adam Kiyakim Rikem, it means that the whole of man, not that only the ish, let's say, like the gvur of the person, the specific person. Adam, the whole person is Kiyakim Rikem. The idea that the carbon is the whole person. Kiyakim. So you have to understand why is this lotion of Adam? So that's Ari's going to tell us a little bit on this, understand this. So the Indian Maris Negoyim. So there's a Mishnah. The Mishnah is a Mishnah Negoyim. So the Mishnah says that the Maris Negoyim Shtayim Shem Arba. So the Mishnah, it's a famous Mishnah because the Mishnah, the Gemara quotes it in Shabbos, also at the beginning of Shabbos. That sometimes it says two, really is four. Shtayim Shem Arba, like the Gemara says in Shabbos. So there's Beharis and the Seis, and these are the two types of Negoyim. And in Beharis and Seis, there's going to be different coloring, so the levels is the levels of coloring. If it's color like kesheleg, that if it's like it's a one type of white, or it's krum beitza, or and it's another type of white, or if like it's semer. These are all different shades of white coloring. So Negoim is connected to the idea also of white. Also important to understand. So there's the skin of the body, the skin, the oir psari. The oir psari represents like the outer skin of the body. And right away, when you think about oir psari, you should think, right, when you think about that there's an oir psari, you should think about where's the oir, where's the first time we have this concept of oir, is the story of the chet of Adam and Chava, where there's where they were ksoinus oir, they were put on garments of skin, ksoinus oir with an aleph. So something that's going to connect us back to the chet etzadas. So the pasuk says, "Oyim v'noyu mishpatos eisim eni yotza." So pasuk Chababu. So oyim v'noyu mishpatos eisim eni yotza. That's going to be a lot of harsh decrees. Mishpatos eisim eni yotza. Eisim is like the law of the dictates of this nation of Kasdim. We talked about Kasdim. Will be very harsh. So Se'esa is connected to the word Se'es, which is Se'es and Sabachas and the Beheres. Se'es comes from like the word that it's lifted. Yisa, yeah. So it's like something that's lifted, and then Beheres is something like that there of clarity. So Se'esa many yetzadak. Se'esa behipuch is ishti. Yan kizacha. That the letters Se'esa is also connected to the word ishti. Yan kizacha. What does it mean yan kizacha? The Gemara says that zacha nase is it says ezer kinekta. A person's wife is ezer kinekta. That im zacha nase ezer loy zacha nase kinekta. So there's an idea of something that's turned, that's something that could be in a position that's positive, and it's flipped, and then it becomes something that's negative. But not that it's inherently negative. Not that it's inherently negative. This is what the Ari is going to talk about later on about the idea of the oiris Shema. Rachel Leah, when we talk about, I don't think you have it on your pages, but yeah.
Oh, and Adam ki Abisar.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. So he talks about the oiris. He talks about that.
And Reish Chaf.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look very quick, Gamis of Zosh is saying Mav Oila Adam, many Yetzirah Nashim Rachel Leah, Mayesh Gimel Alfin. And the three alpha that comes from Shema. Shema is the 45 when you spell Yudke Vavke. So you can spell Yud Vav. Hey can be spelled and Vav can be spelled two ways. You can spell Hey Yud, Hey Aleph, Hey. So when you spell it Hey Aleph, you'll have, and then Vav Aleph Vav and Hey Aleph, you'll have three Alephs. So the three Alephs, these are the three oiris that are nimshach that are drawn down to Rachel and Leah. Because Rachel and Leah, again, this is another conversation. Rachel and Leah correspond to like the backside, Machurav. It's like the parts of Adam is Machurav, which is the back of Adam. And the back of Adam there's from the Minachaza, from the chest upward, represents the third highest part, which represents Leah. So that's like the place of Achurav can also be translated, if you want to translate it like in a more modern definition, is like the subconscious, something like that. It's like Machurav means something, the backside is something that you're not conscious of. It's not clear. So Machurav represents like the subconscious side. So in the subconscious side, there's the idea of Leah, which represents like the intellectual subconscious, or the subconscious that's connected to the mind. That's Machazal Mila. Then there's Machazal Lamata, from the chest downward on the backside. So it's like the backside of Adam. You'll have two madregas of Rachel, which is going to be until the feet, and then when the feet itself, the legs. So these correspond to the three levels of Aleph. So the Aleph Shema, we're not getting into the details. The Aleph Shema moves into these three levels to give them life, to give these Machurav light. If there's some type of, we'll see what it is. If there's some type of that the flow is not flowing correctly, that it's not moving in the correct fashion, then it creates the guard. So Negoim is when something is potentially positive. That's why the opposite of negative is oineg. That means potentially something is positive, but it's reflected in a negative way. So that's why Behuva Lakoyin is bringing it to the coin. The coin has to do some rectification to undo the negativity. We'll have to see what that is, but that's really what the process is. So the same thing what he's saying is that ishti could be something that's your counterpart, your positive counterpart, like your shadow healthy counterpart. That could be one level, or it can actually turn to something to be actually something that could be negative. Yan ki Dal Mars who these Dal Mars are like this. These Dal Mars, these four types of Negoim correspond to. It's a lot of imagery here that we're not really fully unpacking, but the Dal Mars correspond to the four Nishei of Samach Mem, the four wives of Samach Mem.
In AriZal, and we should.
So, how do we say this? Like this again, just like there's a masculine and a feminine. The masculine and feminine, there's a positive masculine and a positive feminine. There's also, which is when these two things are aligned. The same thing also, there could be a positive masculine that's being hijacked by negative feminine, or negative feminine hijacked by positive feminine. What that means is basically is that when there's a proper yichud, when there's a proper unification between what has to be given to the person that has to receive, and the person receiving it is receiving it in a correct manner and is open to receive it, then that's considered a good movement. There's no klipa. What does klipa represent? Klipa represents what the idea of the Nikah B'Chitzonim represents when there's some type of incorrect balance between what's being given and what's being received. That could be a lot of different things. Why is it incorrect balance? The most dominant feature of this incorrect balance is when the giver is doing it just for selfish reasons. So if you're giving for the sake of your own self-gratification, because it makes you feel better or you want this to release, and you're not interested in what the person's receiving, that's considered a klipa. That's considered something that's negative. So the way, in the language of Kabbalah, the way the AriZal or the Zohar uses this language, I'll give it a name of a shed, like a name of a shindala, like a demon. But we're not actually talking about
These things.
No, we're not always talking about like a little wing thing that's pictures, but it represents something that's being created. And it's klipa, something that's a negative force that's being created when there's not a positive relationship between the giving and the receiving. So all these, like for example, we don't say the name, but let's say Lilith or Nama, or it's just all these names of klipa, of these feminine klipas, what they all represent certain types of male physical expression that was not properly given. It could also be another Makom.
In the case of another Makom, who's the Makabo?
Yeah, it's a kid. We're putting out into the world, yeah. It's generally, but no, it could be. If a person says, let's say, if a person davens, let's say, and doesn't have kavanah, therefore you're not hurting anybody. So he's mitzvah zera l'Torah. What does that mean? It means that there was a clip. You gave out something into this world that was actually not something that was ready to be received by anything. It's just wasted wind that you just wasted wind. That's considered a use of zera, which is like of koyach of the person to something that doesn't have a kabel. So it's like it's and let's say you're doing it just because, let's say you're davening, theoretically. I don't know if it would happen. Let's say you're davening and someone walks into the room and you want to show the person that you're really such a big machav and you have such kavanah. So you start screaming, like as if you're the biggest tzaddik in the world. So now what you're doing is you're giving for yourself. You're just trying to show off. So then who's the makabel of this oil? It'll be Lilith. right? Which means that the oil now is just given into this world that there was no makabos, is just for the point of your own giving. So these are 4 different forms of giving. It could be the gaiva is like the overarching clip over here, but any type of it could be doubt. It could be like, but it also comes from gaiva, But a person that has a low self-esteem, which is also a problem with your esteem, could also be a form. So these are Dalin Maris who is in the Shayat. It's missing already. It's over here in the bottom. Brings up there on the AriZal. The other one that says is the Shay Samach Mem is Nam of Lilith. We don't see the name generally, but and then is Sagir. Okay. These are the 4. So the 4 Dalin the Goyim represent these 4 types of klipa that are revealed. And what are they? And what is this? This is Amidav B'Chava. When we talk about Chava had a Zahuma, Chava had a Tuma. What does it mean? This represents this type of. This represents this type of giving, where there's just the mashpia and there's no makabel. Elohim kineged adal di Moshe lokach Yaakov dugmas adoration. These correspond to Yaakov Avinu, who also had 4 wives. Okay, so the 4 wives correspond to the 4 levels of the possibility of the opposite. This is a tikkun. This is a tikkun through adoration. How is this a tikkun? Because Adam and Yaakov is Shufad Yaakov and Shufad adoration. So Yaakov represents the beauty of adoration, which means that he represents the tikkun of adoration. So Yaakov is the world, the way things are being betuken, things are becoming rectified. So the way they become rectified is through the idea of proper relationships between Yaakov the Mashpia and the Imois, which represents the Makabel. When there's going to be a tikkun, when Yaakov is going to be in a way that's betuken with these 4 Imois, so he's repeating the story of Adam Chanukah in the garden, but now he's doing this in a way that's betuken, in a way that's actually rectified. The name of the pasuk, is Barzal. So Barzal is Bila Rivka, Bila Rachel, Zilpa, Zilpa Leh. So the Barzal is actually the 4 Imois. So there's Oig Melech HaBashan. I remember L'Samach Mem. What does the Oig Melech HaBashan have to do with this whole conversation? So in everything, like you said, this is important. Every single thing, there's actually a Mashpia Makabel. And every single dynamic, there's always a Mashpia Makabel. In terms of our relationship to the Eretz Yisrael, we are the Adam, we're the Mashpia, and the earth, the land itself, is the Makabel. Right? So that's the relationship. Now, Oig, what is Oig doing? Oig doesn't want to let Klal Yisrael into Eretz Yisrael. So Oig wants to create a separation between the Mashpia and the Makabel. In the Eretz Yisrael itself, let's say if it's raining, right? So rain is Kechasim Yetzim Lefnei Akala. The Gemara brings the tiniest, a lot of different Lashonis. Why it's called Yora, Malkish, Revia, Sheroiva Sa'aretz. That rain is the Mashpia, right? And the earth is the Makabel. So every single scenario that you have, there's always the Mashpia and there's the Makabel. When the Mashpia, when there's a unity between the Chas and the Kala, then there's actually a rectification that's going on. There's a tikkun. So in Klal Yisrael, which represents the collective Adam, right? So this the collective Adam enters Eretz Yisrael, which is the Makabel. Oig does not want to allow that to happen. So Oig is the embodiment of this klipa that's trying to separate Klal Yisrael from entering Eretz Yisrael, because that would be a tikkun of the mashpia and the makabel, the collective mashpia with the collective makabel, which is Eretz Yisrael. So it's when it says that Adam Mishnah was nifresh from Ishtoi, so this the Gemara says this. This is not even from the Zohar. The Gemara says that in Raven. The Gemara says that for 130 years he separated from his wife. And what was he doing for 130 years? It says then that he was creating lilim veruchim, like these negative spirits, which is samach mem. Shoel kuflamen. Samach mem is kuflamen. It's kuflamen, but it's not again. It's kuflamen. Generally, it's 130. So there's a tikkun. There's something that happens on the Marisha lacher that was nifresh mi'isrei, because there was no proper unity between Adam and Chava, so that he was nifresh mi'ishtoi. So the Gemara actually says two different girsais. One is Yoshev b'tshuva, that he was actually doing tshuva, and one says actually no, that on the Rishon is minhaya, that he was actually not occurs. So whatever the process was, what the tshuva, how he was doing it, there was some type of separation between him and his wife, between Adam and Chava. The idea of the separation in that state, if Adam is being mashpia, and there's no makabel, there's no Chava, what is he creating? He's creating this ruchim. He's creating these negative forces, which means that he's creating these, and that's why that's the klippa. The klippa is when there's the mashpia is trying to give, and there's no makabel that's receiving.
So to bring it down a little bit, would this be basically like creating realities that are only half realities?
Yeah.
It's like there's something there, but yet there's nothing for it to hold on to.
Right, but the problem is
There's
since there's nothing to hold on to, it actually finds another place to go. Let's try to Tuma. Right, but what no, I'm saying is when we say this is like a unique l'chitzonim. In other words, if you create something,
There's always going to be unique. The question is to where.
when you generate something, there's something that's going to receive it. There's something that you just created. There's something that's going to have to be received from that. If there's no proper movement of that receiver, if there's no proper receiver, it's going to create something else. Let's say if a person davens with a lot of energy, but he's not doing it in a proper way. Let's say there's no real kavanah in the mashpia and the kabbalah. You're really connecting to Hashem, and Hashem is receiving your tefillos. You're really opening to Hashem, and Hashem is giving you your tefillos. There's no connection that way. What's going to happen after davening is you're just going to be an angry person because you're going to have a lot of energy that you just created, and there's no makabel. Right, so you're going to have to do something. You're going to have to have that outlet where it's going to have a proper somewhere something to receive it. If you don't have the proper receiver, it's going to go somewhere, and if it's not going in the correct way, it's going to go something that's incorrect.
Was that Oig did the same thing as Adam?
Oig is a samach man. Oig doesn't want. What's a samach man? What is the idea of the samach man? The samach man is what's getting in between the proper Adam and Chava. So Oig, who knows that our klal so collectively are not going to do a tikkun. They're going to create the Gemara tikkun of the Chet Tzadas. There's going to be an original plan where that was going to be, right? He was going to enter into soul, and Oig corresponds. Oig is like the counterbalance to Moshe Rabbeinu. So if Moshe Rabbeinu is Eser Amma, how big is Oig? Is Tisha Amma. He's like his counterbalance of Klippa. That counterbalance of Klippa doesn't want Moshe, doesn't want Klal Yisrael to enter into soul, because if they enter into soul as a collective, the mashpia will be now mashpia into the makabel, into the earth, into the land, and the physical world. The physical world will be transformed. Then it'll be Mashiach. It'll be the Maratichel. So Oig stands in the way of that and creates the illusion. What's the illusion that Oig creates? The illusion that he's powerful and you're not going to be able to enter into soul. So that's like creates self-doubt. Right? That's the doubt that you can achieve that is the klippa. So it's not Oig is a character, but it also represents an idea. What's the idea within us? If you have to go to Eretz Yisrael, let's say Klal Yisrael to get to Eretz Yisrael, right? But they don't enter Eretz Yisrael. Why do they enter Eretz Yisrael? Because they don't. They say that we're grasshoppers. Who are we? There's giants in Eretz Yisrael, which is Oigus from the giants, and we can't enter Eretz Yisrael. What are they really saying is we can't do this thing. This is not going to work because they don't believe that they can actually achieve this. That's exactly what Oig wanted to achieve. That's the klip of Oig. He put that seed of doubt that said that it's impossible. And even Moshe Rabbeinu says, and Rashi brings down something more inside, even Moshe Rabbeinu was afraid of Oig. Because he said that he has chusim because he called Noach and he told Sarah about the Akedah, like he has chusim that Moshe was afraid of Oig. The idea of fear, saying that I can't achieve that's right. And we can't go into Eretz Yisrael. So this is all the concept of when AriZal is talking about these structures of klipa in a pneumistic way, in a nafshistic way. We're talking about actually things that are going on within us that are not allowing to achieve what we have to achieve in this world. And so this is what happens to Adam Rishon, and then Yaakov is trying to create a tikkun for this. So Yaakov, by taking these four wives, which is going to be a tikkun for the four forms of klipa, which we didn't discuss, but the four forms of klipa that eventually come will become the Nagayim. He's doing a tikkun for that, and therefore he's going to actually struggle with that. He's going to be tzaleya also on his yerech, which is obviously connected to the same dynamic. Okay, we'll see if we're going to try to learn Kisari. It's complicated. There's a lot of technical pieces, and after we're going to try. Be'ez Hashem. If it's not going to work, we'll learn something a little more easy. Whatever, we'll figure it out. Okay. So Hakim says Adam ki Psara. Hakim says that Adam that has this blemish on the skin. It doesn't say Ish. Why does it say Ish? Ki Chalech Hatim Tzad Adam. The chet was because he's only Adam. And when he says Adam, he's not yet the highest level. Because Yaakov, which is the Adam, Shufat Yaakov and Shufat Adam Rishon, he is not yet a complete person until Yaakov is actually called Yisrael. Originally, he's only called Yaakov. But only when it becomes Yisrael, then he's become complete. What actually happens? When Yaakov is still called Yaakov, what actually happens? Yaakov was still midbag with kafir reichoi. What is kafir reichoi? The thigh. So what is what is really kafir reichoi? The thigh. The thigh is simlach kafir reichi. When Avram tells Avram when he tells him simlach kafir reichi, we know that Yerechi is not actually the thigh. Yerechi is actually is the place of mitzvah yisoid, right? So what is that it was midbag with kafir reichi means that there was a damage in the place of Yerechi. Right, that's where the koyach hatum. That's the koyach hasama. The Sarish Shalesa that Yaakov was doing battle with the Sarish Shalesa. Who the Sarish Shalesa is? Samach man. So what does it mean that he's doing battle with the Sarish Shalesa and the dog that he was that nidbaks the kafir reicha means that Yaakov actually had an experience of damage in the kafir reicha. Even Eichus writes in Tiferes that that's actually why Yaakov didn't actually have 13 children, 13 boys. Really, Yaakov should have Echad. He should have 13, which is you have Echad, which should be Navar Shalom. He should have Mitasa Shlem of Echad, which means as a unified one. He had 12, which is still Makam Apirut. It represents the Gimel Gvule Alachsan. It's like if you take a square, a box, whatever, you have 12 poles. I don't know how to say this, but right, you have 12 things. 4, 4, 4, 4 is 12 lines. Okay, yes. So that represents the dimensionality. So Yaakov only has 12, but really he should have 13. That's why actually La'asad Lavi. So it says that La'asad Lavi that it would be divided. The Gemara it says they were actually divided into 13 chalakim, and the 13 chalakim is either Yosef or Levi will get another chalik. So AriZal will be divided into 13 because that's not a shleimus. That's another. That's mushlim. That's complete. Yaakov didn't have that completion. Why? Because it was still not going to be kefir that there was some type of spiritual on the level of Yaakov Avinu. On that high, very high madrega, there was still some level that we can still say that there was some connection to the Samach Mem. So that's when we were the kafir reicha. That was some problem there. V'hutzaleya, and it says v'hutzaleya, Yaakov was a tzaleya. What was it tzaleya? Mitzadat tzela achash ha'ilad v'koydim.
He was limp.
Yeah, he was limp. What is the tzela? The tzela represents that state of Yaakov, which in his previous incarnation, which means that he was Adam Rishon. When he took Echem Mitzaloisav, then when it says when Adam Rishon says and then he says Lezois Yikari Isha, what does it mean? Lezois Yikari Isha. Lezois means to this one. What do you? There was another one. What does it mean? Lezois Yikari Isha. That Adam, when he names Adam, you call Isha Lezois Yikari Isha. Lezois Yikari Isha. Why Lezois Yikari Isha? It sounds like there was a previous one. So what does that mean? What does that mean that we're animals? So first of all, this is one of the versions. I forgot what it was. But Sephora writes, that contrast to the animals. Okay, but the oimik of that is, what does it mean animal? What does it actually mean that what does it mean he was intimate with an animal? What does that actually mean? It means that his relationship was like an animal. What's right, like an animal? Just like an animal does things just for the self. They're not looking for intimacy. A monkey is not looking to be intimate. A monkey is looking to procreate. That's what he does in this world. So just like Adam Kodim before was in a state that that he was with kaviachol with an animal that was bechinas achorayim, that he was just for the purpose for himself to give. So that reality is a creation of the koyach hatumah of samach man. That's what he says lizoisi karish. He says, but now it's like a mitzaloisa, it's one of me. It comes from me. So actually, I have a relationship with this. So therefore, it can be as a connector. It can actually be something like I can actually identify the other within myself. Now, therefore, I can have a relationship. So, in the original way of Adam relating to even to Chava, if Chava was his first wife, it was his type of iskalos. Yeah, it was a type of charayim. So difference with charayim. That means a behemoth. That means that he had a relationship, and that means little. That's little baruch. That's the concept. That's the samach mem. Because it's only about the self. But when he has a relationship with his Chava, then he says aim kol choy, and it says and therefore he says it could be eza connected, which means he's having a relationship upon him.
Doesn't it say that the Rav created the shin ballots on day 3 or something?
Day 2.
Day 2.
Yeah.
Shade Mazikin.
Yeah.
So the Rav gave a head start. How does that?
So no, this
is was somewhat responsible for whatever trial period it was.
No, it means no. It's the same thing also today. When you say malachim are created, yeah. I used to be not to take it. What does it mean katega? So the Bartanur says it means malachim. You do ma'asim. It's you create malachim, but the should create malachim already also. When the should create malachim, that's also another shayla medish. After either day 5 or day 6. I think there's two days matters. But it means that every time we do something, we're creating things. We're creating.
It sounds like created before.
Yeah, they're also mazik, but it's a concept. It's like sort of like the embodiment of this idea. Yeah, like a blueprint of this idea. Oh, it's that, and also the possibility for that idea that he created man in a way that he can live, that he can be creating mazikim. Otherwise, if they just going to create that koyach, it wouldn't exist. But it's the selfishness of the idea. That's the idea of the. So yeah, so that's why actually when it talk, you ever see when they hang up the mazel tovs when the child is born, so it's a shmir for Lilith. It's a shmir for this klipa. Why? So it has to do with like the whatever. I mean, it's a serious that it has to do with the babies. God forbid, like what's it called?
Nefal
like children that passed what are niftar. Yeah, whatever. Like
NFTs.
People that little children that die. This is what's against this problem. Why is it? What is the issue? What does Lilith have to do with killing babies? I mean, what kind of machine and things? What's the seichel of that? What's the idea? Because Lilith, it's not a thing. The clip of Lilith says, "I would like to have physical intimacy without any consequence." If it's all about yourself, I'm not trying to create anything. I just want to indulge my own pleasures. I don't need babies to be created from this thing. I don't want there should be babies. Babies is a steer to my whole existence. The whole idea of Lilith is saying that I was like, okay, be selfish. Whatever you want to do, be selfish. Live for your own self. So, okay, I'm a selfish person.
Irresponsible intimacy.
Yeah, irresponsible intimacy. A baby comes into this world, I have to take care of the diapers and feed the child and spend money on them. That's not what I'm arguing for. I just want to have a selfish act. So the clip of Lilith is against this idea. That's why it takes away the baby. That's what the oimik of the idea of against this. Snatching the baby.
Can't happen, so no one can have.
No, that's the clip. The clip means the death of that idea. The death of the concept there should be a baby. That's the clip of it. Because
it has 4 names, so it's 4 connected.
For the connected, yeah.
Because it has the emos on one side and the other.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. So ish, yeah. So the Gemara says ish. Is you loy zachru is eish, and zachru is shchina shur b'nei. You have the yud k, the yud of ish, and the hey of yud of isha is shchina shur b'nei that has the unity between these two. Ki be'acher shneim nikar eish. Without the ish, without the yud k, and this is we're going to see what the oimik over here, because this is where the nukud is. Without the yud k, without the higher name, it's just going to be Eish. What's Eish? Eish is fire, desire. That what do they want? It's passion without anything, without any responsibility, passion without anything that's higher. It's Eish.
He's not grounded. Because Aish is it's the only soul that goes up, right?
Correct. There's no keli. There's no keli. It's without a keli. I hear that said. Yeah, and then it says
they're not grounded. There's a lack of grounding.
You should say that, yeah. Okay, that's what it says over there. However, Lulu doesn't have a koyach and so on. That's mekadosh hashmish al tashmish. What's mekadosh hashmish al tashmish? What does that mean? So what is the? Let's go back into the Adam and Chava. Adam and Chava, the whole problem, the whole introduction of this whole Samach Mem issue came because of the Chet Das. The Chet Das is actually because of the Nachash, and the Nachash is the Samach Mem. So what does the Nachash say? What is the clip of the Nachash? The Nachash is saying the Nachash is Nachash Hasiyani, is Yesh Ani. The Nachash is Yesh. It says that Yidei Elikim, that you're going to be like gods. And the Nachash says, that really you could eat from the tree, but the truth is the reason why Hashem says you shouldn't eat the tree, because when you eat from the tree, you're going to have mamash, the highest level of asagas. So what is the convincing argument for Chava to eat from the tree, to eat from the Chet Tzadas? The convincing argument is Yeshus. Yeshus means I don't want to be in the dark. I would like to be like Elikim. The Nachash induces Chava with this grandiose vision that it can reach the highest, the pinnacle of what could be achieved in human. Hashem says that you can't eat it. What does the Nachash say? No, the truth is the reason why Hashem says you can't eat it, because Hashem knows that if you can come, you can be like God. You can be like the Eibishter. So the source of the whole convincing comes from the idea of Yeshus, of ego. And how does it work? How does the ego work? It works in the world of Nachash, which is in the world of imagination, like the klippa of the oir. The oir is there's four madregas. So in the body there's oir, there's basar, there's gidim, and there's atzamas. So these four levels correspond to chachma bina das, and then the oir corresponds to dimyan. So the oir is like the outer skin, the most superficial level of intelligence. So chachma bina das is like the higher levels of intelligence, like almost like the achorayim, the backside, the external side of chachma bina das is the koyach hadimon, is the oir. So the nachash, which is eventually going to become, is just going to become oir, right? The nachash is going to have to shed its skin. That's the whole thing is about its skin. That the nachash is trying to convince Chava using the koyach of dimya, the koyach of imagination, that and in a way that's using the koyach of imagination to say that you are the pinnacle. It's all about you. Everything's about you, and you can achieve that. You're the highest thing in this world. So what's the tikkun for that? What is the tikkun for that klippa that created the possibility that it created sound? The tikkun for that is the recognition that there's something higher. So the real tikkun is actually bittul. The real tikkun is to recognize, okay, yes, I'm created with the tremendous potentials, and I have Hashem gave me all these, but ultimately I'm a creation from Hashem. And and I'm created by a higher power, and the recognition that there is a higher power. The Nachash says that you are the power, but the recognition that there is a higher power is what is actually the breaking of that klippa of that sama. Because if you are the power, then everything's about you. So if I feel good about doing this thing, I do it. But if I say that it's not about you, there's something larger, there's ish v'isha and shchina shari b'neim, there's like the presence of Hashem that's resting above this. And I say, okay, so it's not about me. It's not about you, it's about us. Because there's something larger than us that wants us to be in a unified place, that we should create something new in this world. So the concept of the yud-kei, which creates from the eish, takes away just the passion of the selfish passion, and creates the Yud-K, which creates the higher passion. I understand that there's something higher is actually part of the tikkun of this idea. So if saras, this is what he's not gonna. Let's see if he fears this. But if the idea of saras, if the idea of the goyim comes from the four klippas of the sama, of the nishei sama, like the churaim of sama, which is the four types of koyach hadinyan, of fantasies of that create a reality that a person just wants for the self and just wants for his own ego. If that's the clip that creates it, and then it shows up, where would it show up? In his psar, it would actually show up in his external part of the body, because it comes, the whole concept is from an external perspective on the backside, and it shows up as an psar. What would be the tikkun for that? The tikkun with that would be to recognize that there's something higher. So this is what he says. A person says but a person so there is a nar yotzim me'eden lahashkas hagan, right? The pasuk says that the nar yotzim me'eden lahashkas hagan. So you have Eden, nar, and gan. Eden, nar, and gan is obviously the Rosh Hashanah of Oinig and the Rosh Hashanah of Nega, right? So you have it's just a matter of how you structure it. Eden, nar, gan, which means a nar yotzim me'eden. Nar is already a spashtus, right? Spashtus means that it's already an expansive. The gan is already the actual garden, which is where it's irrigating, where it's actually filling up with this spashtus. But where is it coming from? It's coming from a place of Eden. So the Zohar says in Bereishis that Eden represents Chachma, and the Nar Yetzim Eden Nar is Bina, but more the way it's flowing into the 6 minutes, and Vagan represents Malchus. So Oinek is Eden Nar Gan, right? Which means you start from Eden, and then you go to Nar, then you go to Gan, then you have Oinek, which is the opposite of Nega. What is Oinek? Oinek means pleasure. When you have a movement that starts with when you start the whole movement which is Eden, which is the idea of that you're saying that I'm connected to something that's higher, and the reason why I'm doing this is because it's a mitzvah, and the reason why I'm doing this is because I want to bring something positive into this world. Because every time a person is intimate with their spouse, they're creating oyers, they're creating neshamas, they're creating malachim, they're creating something. Doesn't necessarily mean they're creating physical neshama, physical malachim, but there's always something that's being created there. That's your neshama for a future. Could be gay, or there's a whole structure of different things that you're creating, because you're always creating something. So if you're doing with the kavanah, you're saying that I want to create something together with yichud, not for my own selfish purposes, but I want to create something together. And I do that. So then what I'm doing is I'm drawing down from a place of the Eden Nar into the Gan. And who's the Gan? The Gan is the Isha Nar. So I'm bringing down from my Nar, from my wells of water, and it's irrigating the Gan. And therefore the child it's pure pleasure, and it's a proper yichud. That's when it's done correctly. The Nasalahem Einig Hepchanega. This is what it means. Someone that's Zareya Komayim Chaim, Mayim Chaim is living waters, who make Mishim Mekadosh Atzmai. It's a living thing. Why is it a living thing? Because if it's about yourself, if it's about to feed your own ego, and this, by the way, we're talking about this as only in terms of like intimate things, but it's not mamish, it's everything. It's when you eat, when you sleep, when you walk in the street, whatever you're doing in this world. If you're doing it for yourself, then there's no chaim. It's mavas. Why is there no chaim? Because you're not continuing something. If you eat something for the purpose of me just being satisfied, so it dies when I ate it. That's it. It's finished. But if I eat something to do something, right? If I eat something so I can have whatever I'm doing, but I'm doing something for something, then that's a continuous act. I eat, so now I have strength, and therefore I have strength, I do something else, and because I do something else, I do something more. Right, so it's a chaim. It's constantly moving. But if I just do it for myself, what I have is actually tumah. It's misa.
Could you say it's connecting to the haya niya? Like you're connecting to the expanse of time in that way?
Yeah, always. Yeah. Or if you're not doing it that way, what are you connecting to tumah? What's not the tumah? The tumah is a separation. The tumah is separation. How do you know if you did something and it's the right thing to do, This already says a Chassidus. So how do you know if after you do it, if you feel energized or you feel depleted? If you feel depleted, it means let's give klippa. Because you gave something out and didn't receive. And nothing was further. But if you gave and you feel you have stronger koyach, right? That means that you're actually entering into the shafra. Because you created something more. This is what he's saying. That Ashechem Zoyachom Ma'im Chayim, if a person's Zarei Ma'im Chayim, because they recognize that everything that they're doing is moving towards a tachlis, moving towards something, and creating something new. So you're creating new neshamas, and new malachim, and new things are creating in the world. And this shafra will continue and continue and continue. Then you're doing the opposite of nega, and you're doing oinig. Because then it's a now it's an Eden, sagan, and then it becomes a gan, then you eat the gan, then you eat the fruit. So it's a continuous process. If you don't do Mekadesh, you're not Mekadesh, then that's a nega, then it goes the other direction. Then what is it? Then what's the structure? Nar gan Eden. Nar gan then Eden. Nar gan. You start off with these pashtas. You don't start off with that there's a higher thing. You don't start with an Eden. You don't start with a chokhmah that I'm doing this. Okay, I'm doing this for kavanah. I'm doing it because it's a nar. What does a nar mean? I have a need to be mispashet. There's like an overflowing of juice that of waters that have to be released. If that's where you're coming from, if the nar is the foundation, then what you create, the saked lashka zagan, it's going to flow into something, but there's actually not going to be neotach. So what you can actually feel is nega. Because that's the Maimah according. This is also waters. In other words, it seems to be like you're giving. What you just did was an act of giving, but you're giving waters of death. What does it mean giving murky waters? What is the murky waters? That's the waters of the Me'amarim. This is exactly what happens to the Soita. The Soita actually experiencing death.
The stomach implodes.
The stomach implodes, which means instead of the place of the person, the place where the zera mazria and that brings new life, it actually collapses, implodes, and it actually brings death. And what's the v'niksa zera? And if the woman, if the soita drinks the water and she was tired, forget what that actually happens. So she was mazria, she's mazria because she's having mayim chayim. And if she was even giving children one way, she gets children even on a higher level, more beautiful children, right? So the idea is that the kedusha element is the furthering. The oinig shabdara, the nariyotzim eden, when there's a shefa of kedusha and it's connected to zerim and makam elyon, then it's actually ashechem zoyer kol ma'im achayim. This is what he's saying. This is the oasis of the Ari. This everything turned into dam of nida, which is the absence of life, the loss of life. So that's dam nida, right? That's what the nida, the dam nida is the absence. Hamavim tzaras. And then it goes from voice hey shel Avram iktin atzmo. Well, how did it fly? Voice hey shel Avram iktin atzmo. Voice hey shel Avram iktin atzmo. So over here it says on the bottom it says voice hey shel Avram iktin atzmo. Ve'ira ein lo muvum kan. It's not kan, but l'chora. We have to assume that it is moving kan. The Pashtus, it's talking about the Bihibaram. It's talking about Bihibaram. And Chazal Adoyer Bihibaram is Bishul Avram, and the hay of that Bihibaram is a small hay. So it's Iktinas Atzma, which means the humility. The opposite of the Gaiva. The opposite of the Gaiva is Avram Avinu. And Avram is Aver Chai, whatever Avram is connected. But Aver, there's a lot of, probably that's what Ari is morales.
Also, Nachman says in Sefer Midos that one is mocking himself is a skula for children. Meaning being mocked in oneself is a skula for children. Maktin.
Oh, yeah. It's the same word, yeah. This is all. This is Chazal. The Gemara in Erechim brings out all different things that the Goyim come from, and this is all the things. So this is all, but the side of all these things is Gasa Ruach, Gila Rois, Gaiva. It's all the same thing. And this, the way that AriZal is reading, it's all the same thing. What's the Gila Rois? The Gila Rois is the Gaiva, the selfishness. I just want it for myself. If I want it for myself, that's the end result of that thing is the reflection of the klippa, of these $4 klippas of the opposite side of Chava, which is reflected in the Arb Sorry, in the Nega. Okay, because the Venemus Bossy Yanki Govu Gumnoisi and Nika Seis Hashem Agaiva, Sapachas Hashem Gilarois, Hashem Damanidos. So the Shines of Psukim is Seis. Seis means something that rises, represents Gaiva. Sapachas Hashem Gilarois, Sapachas is something that's expanding, is Gilarois, like we said, is Ispashtas, the Nar, Ubeheres. Hashem Damanidos, something that becomes clear, something gets discharged, becomes clear, there's Damanidos. Therefore, he has to come to the Kohen. Why? If he's got it, he has to tshuva. Because when he's Mizgira, he has to tshuva, because he's going to Yachal up. Why can't he do it in Yachal?
There's no one to talk to. Meaning, what caused him to do the bad? No, wasn't it that he was talking with people about someone else? Now there's no one to talk to.
Yeah, okay, that's the Lashon Hara part of it. But the guy part of it means that Metzora part of it. I think it means that I don't know. Okay, Vim Loishav. Okay, I guess because that's by being with these bundles, maybe that's going to force you to rethink your life. Because he says Vim Loishav. There's also a possibility he didn't do tshuva. But this is like, the Gemara says that, sometimes you have to be Pirish, Mishana Malkin, sometimes for tshuva. So it's like you go to a different place, maybe you can have a here tshuva. Maybe to recognize like what happened because of your actions, what it did.
By Avram Avinu, when he was supposed to go, he got 3 brachas to counteract, right? That you lose children, children when you travel.
Shalom, yeah.
And you don't have you lose your money and you lose, so maybe that's connected a little bit. Yeah, also, like you lose your name.
Yeah.
So you're less of a somebody if you're traveling. You're here, there. So he's moving from he's dislocated.
Okay. This one Okay, we don't read the rest because that's Rahman al-Islam what he says. He finishes off this Rahman al-Islam. Rahman al-Islam, if a person does tshuva, he goes in the whole different direction. Let's just say that the klal over here is that yeah. That Kohen if you look later, the next shtickle, when he talks about Huvel Kohen, so the Kohen, it's ish. The Kohen is isha chesed. Isha chesed means that the Kohen is going to represent chachma. That's what I'm going to say. Istalkas. If you look over there, Istalkas Abba Shu Shem Abba Yud Nigoyim Liz Metzora. That is Istalkas Abba. The Abba is basically Abba's chachma. And Istalkas Abba is going to be where the person becomes a nega, and he's going to have to go back to the kohen. The kohen is going to be the person that brings him chachma. What is it? He's the isha chesed, means that he's standing beyond chesed. What does it mean that he's standing beyond chesed? He's really represents the idea of chachma, and he's going to bring a certain level of bittul or a certain level of like proper understanding, proper chachma, proper wisdom for this person, and through that the person will have purity.
It's also interesting that the Kohen is determining the status of the person, even if the person knows Allah is better than the Kohen.
Yes,
the Kohen has to verbalize, which is very demeaning to feel like you can't decide your own life, whether you can leave or not leave.
That's true too. That's true. So we're going to close this now for a second. Did you understand? Everything was clear?
It's not on the kilometer.
Well, about the Kufla, why?
What does that number represent?
It's there's a lot of things that represent.
I just don't understand the connection between Adam and Oig.
No,
What was Oig doing to parallel Adam?
No, it's not.
Or on the animals?
No, it's Moshe, right?
He's Moshe in this parallel, and Klal Yisrael is actually Adam. Oig represents the Nachash.
His Pirush, his Afrosha, for 130 years,
Yes.
accomplished what? Accomplished bad.
Yes, it was a separation. Yes.
That was the Kavanah.
So as I said, the Gemara brings up two ways of see this.
Yeah.
But there definitely need to take. Moshe Rabbeinu was born when Amram was how old?
130, I presume.
130. So Moshe, which is Das, is going to be a ticket for the Das. So what does Moshe do? Moshe is actually the one that brings Amram and Yechel back together. So there's idea of there's the Pirush, and then there's actually the unification. Unification is the Tachlis. The Tachlis is unification. Anytime there's going to be, let's say another structure, but it's the same idea. Every time Klal Yisrael has to build a Beis Hamikdash, there has to be Mechemes Amalek. Right? You build a Mishkan, there's Mechemes Amalek. You go to Eretz Yisrael, there's Mechemes Amalek. Rambam says in Mashiach, there's Mechemes Amalek. Why? Because Amalek represents a disconnect between Yud Kei Vav, right? And Hashem Shalom, and Kisah Shalom. So it represents the separation, the Malika between the Mashpia and the Makabel. So you have to get rid of that Mashpia Makabel. Then there could be a proper bias. And the AriZal is going to actually talks about later on that the bias is connected to Rachel, which means that it's is a tikkun for everything. Things are coming down between the Mashpia and the Makabel in a correct manner. That's why Schoik is gematria bias, and that's why Oyer is gematria bias twice. This is the idea of creating a ticket for these things. Oig represents, as Klal Yisrael represents at this point, represents the Tsuras Adam Klali, right? It becomes Adam Arishon becomes now Yaakov. Now Klal Yisrael become the embodiment of Adam. They're going into Eretz Yisrael. They're going now into the Makabel. They're going to create a yichud between the Mashpia and the Makabel. They're going to do this in a correct way. All their mitzvahs, all their machshavas, all the diburim is going to be in a correct way. That's they're going into the Gemara Tikkun, they're going to Eretz Yisrael. Oig represents the Samach Ben that doesn't want that to happen. So Oig instills fear in Klal Yisrael and even in Moshe at some level that you cannot do this. You cannot create this unity. That's the same thing what the Samach Ben wanted. Samach Ben wants that Adam and Chava should not be ish to ishtoy. It should not be that. It should not be a yichud. And as I said, a yichud is not just between a man and a woman. A yichud means in every single act you're doing, there's always a yichud. And when do you know if it's a proper? When do you know when you're doing something that's actually a yichud and it's not just klipa, it's not just for the self? Is when there's a hemshech. When there's something that's zoireya and something is created from it. But in order for something to be created from it, there has to be a certain level of humility, recognition that I'm not just doing it for myself. Because for myself, I don't really care. I just care about myself. So okay, I'll go out, and if I need to, kill every cow in the world because I have a big appetite. So that's what I'll do, because I have no recognition that there's others in the world. So the whole idea of selfishness is that klippa that doesn't allow for a person to have proper yichud between mashpia and makabel. That's the bechinos of oig that shows up in that period of time. This is a little bit of different Torah, but
What's 10 o'clock?
here we're going to learn this very quickly because you have to see which mahalach we're going to learn. But you'll see the Baal Shem Tov doesn't even touch anything that AriZal is speaking about. But if you learn a little more about Eimek, you'll see that this is he gives in his own Oisius. It's let's learn the first Torah. This is there's a Metzora of 8 Erev Shnei Slats, Vedish Matakon also be Sama. What should be his takana, and he should be healed. So Yashpil atzmi milusay. Megavosay kedelasik beis. Rashi also brings it down that ketelas ke'ezav you should be that represents the humility. Einish ezav yikach l'tzarish netzor ezav ezav gavoy v'namach sheyashpil daita megas l'ruach k'dei sheyuchol hakoyin lalos. So this doesn't say. This is a shtickle added into Rashi. So there's idea that the person is a gas ruach. And we just understood now the gas ruach, the idea of the arrogance and the ego and the self and the serving of the self is the mucker of the whole idea of the goyim. So Chazal say that why does a person have to bring these humble little ezav and filas is to bring humility, right?
These
little bushes to bring humility. But the Baal Shem Tov adds like a little ois over here. It's the toldus, but he's bringing from his Rebbe that Kadesh Yuchal HaKoyen HaTzadik LaAloisa. That the tachlis is not for the person to be completely, humiliated to the point where there's no ego and it's the destruction of self. No, there has to be some type of healthy self. So he's going to the tzaddik, which is represented by the kohen LaAloisa. So there's going to be hashpala. There's going to be a humbling, but ultimately the purpose of the humbling is actually for the elevation. That there should be a healthy ego. So this is the marshal that he brings out. Marshal, Adam Gavoya Koymer Mo'oid, Oma Neged Zichas HaShemesh. He was a very tall man, and he was standing, outside in the sun. Shezarcha v'igdicha achama igdira achama ola mamash, and he says that the sun is beating on top of his head. So he's a tall person, and he's standing in the sun. There was another wise person to see. This person is really burning in the heat. He sees that the person has no relief, and he's burning up. He's going to have a heat stroke. I don't know. This guy's really hot. Ma'asa, what did this chacham do? So the first thing he does, so he sits down next to this guy, this tall guy, this big arrogant guy that's burning in the sun, and his little guy, and he starts drinking a little water. He doesn't. Why does he do it? Really, he wants the other person to drink the water, but he just doesn't have the oimitz to go tell the guy that he should drink water because he feels himself very humble against this very strong, powerful person. So what he does is he sits down and he starts drinking himself. So he's sort of telling the guy, listen, you're burning up and you're boiling. The truth is, if you take a cup of water, you'll actually feel better. The guy doesn't understand that. This is what the marshal is, right? However, the other person that's drinking the water is very short. This guy was a very tall guy. So he actually sees that the guy, the one that's drinking water, is feeling better by drinking the water. But however, but in order for him to take the cup of water from the other guy, he has to bend down. So he sees that the other person is being helped. This is a very deep psychological analysis of people. He sees that the other person is helped. He sees that water is helped. But the only thing that he has to do at this point, he has to bend down to the other guy, to bend down to get the water. He doesn't want to believe that he needs that other guy. He's a goyver ruach. He's a very strong, powerful man. There's a little kid next to him drinking a cup of water. He now realizes that the kid is actually the way to live is to drink the water, but he doesn't have the humility to bend down and to take the water. I don't need that guy to tell me what I should be doing, even though I see that when it's helping him. But the Chacham is a wise guy and also a very good person. He sees that's not going to help. The guy's never going to bend down. So what does he do? He decides he's going to throw water against that person. Maybe he's going to open his mouth a little bit. At least some water will come into his mouth. He not only won't he say that I don't want that other person, but that person's helping me. Okay, even the water is coming to my mouth. I'm not going to take. And what happened was that same water that the little guy threw at the big guy, it went back into him. So it means that he was nourished. He wanted to give him his own self, his own water that he had, and he wanted to share it with the other person. The other person didn't want to take it. It bounced off the other person, and he received nourishment. This goes back to what we're talking about.
So deep.
It's so deep. This is the marshal said before. Kedusha. Kedusha, when you're really trying to help somebody, you're going to actually be nourished. The other person died in This is the mashal. There's a once a wise city of a very wise people. So that's a lishma lekabel chacham musa echisag v'dach Hashem. At we talk about umador and ishdo yasim. V'achin amid diksiv shemo alav v'tichinavchem. Shemikul l'chol guf v'nefesh. Lishma lekabel musa shemiroi fanefashes k'shkas maram. Mishul loritz lishma musa aleim memer chacham musa vilim bazu. In the chacham musa the simple people the vilim make fun of. That this person is arrogant. This goes back, it's mamish the teachings of the AriZal, but in a very simplified psychological analysis of people. This person received the nega, like the AriZal says, it's gasus ruach. He's not going to go into the whole blunders and the whole Kabbalah, how the person got it. The source of this gas of this is the gasus ruach, is the arrogance. And what's the refuah? The refuah is refuah l'kohen. He has to go to the kohen. He's going to have to be mashal himself to go to the kohen. The kohen is going to be the kohen is going to be the compassionate one, is going to be able to do it, but he needs to go to someone that's going to give him something, and that's the hashmalah. The mere act of going and recognizing that I need something to help me. I'm so stuck in my stuckness that I can humble myself and say I actually need help from somebody else that can see something that I can't see about myself. That in itself is the refuah. That's the Reif HaNefesh. The Reif HaNefesh is the Chacham. The Chacham is the Reif HaNefesh. That's why he has to be dafka. Isha Chesed, it says in other form, because he has to be dafka a very compassionate person. It can't be just any person. He has to say, okay, I understand, but I feel bad for you and I understand your struggles. But he's going to be the person that's going to bring him the refuah. So there's the first part of the mashal is where the person is stuck that they don't want to bend down to the recognition of that they need another person. The second one is something they don't have to bend down; they just have to open their mouth. But it's not the koilim. Me, I need from someone else. Okay, so I don't have to bend down for the other person to mamish receive from the other person, but I even need someone else to help me. Do I even need someone else b'chlal in this world? Right? This is nachash asiyani. The nachash is this yesh that says I just exist. I'm the water and I created the water. Yeah, it's pirates. This is what he's saying. This is the nakuda. So this idea is that I don't need anything. So the water can be thrown in him, the water can give it to him, he'll never open his mouth. You have to go through some type of breaking process where he finally says, okay, I'm gonna die. I'm so stuck, I'm gonna implode. And then he's gonna bend down. Now the Baal Shem Tov turns it on the other person. Now let's talk about the person the healthy person that sees the other person that's struggling, the person that's stuck. You should know who's the wise person, someone that's living mikol adam. Even the person that you know that is a person that's stuck. And you should know that when you see something wrong in another person, you'll say, okay, I really understand something. I can really help this person. It says, no, don't start like that. That's not the first thing to do. The first thing to do is recognize if you see someone struggling, someone's going through a hard time, someone is struggling and stuck in a certain place, say, what is it within me that allowed me to see that within him? So if I can see that same thing within me, then the Baal Shem Tov says, automatically you're actually going to help. You don't actually have to help even. The help will happen if you can recognize the other within yourself, then you allow the other person to see themselves within you, and then the other person will be helped. So in other words, if you're really sympathetic to the other person's problem, to recognize that their problem is your problem, what you're doing is automatically opening up the other person to recognize your solution. They should recognize your solution within you, because it's loose.
Reciprocity.
Exactly. In other words, if you recognize the other person's problem within you and you have a solution because you have the water, the other person, if you could really identify with that, another person could sense it, the other person will then see the cup of water within you that can help them. We're following, so it actually works both ways without actually saying anything. That's the awareness of the other within self. That's the bittul. That's really the bittul. When a person says, if I see something wrong with another person, okay, that person's a shaykhs. Okay, that person, no, wait a second. If I saw it, that means it's something within me. What is within me that allowed me to see it? How can I identify with that other person? within me. If I can identify the self within me, I'm allowing myself for the other person to identify themselves within me. And there was going to tell us says Torah Samoitzi Rami Rosoi Be'em Tarosoi Atzmei. And that Moitzi, the Zois Torah Metzora is a Torah Metzora of the person, the Metzora that then there's a person that the healer is also he's Moitzi Rami Rosoi. He takes the wrath from his own self. That's how he becomes cleansed, and that's through that he cleanses the other person. And this is the way it works.
He ends up using the same mechanism of imagination, but it's meaning the Baal Shem Tov is saying that this is using imagination in a healthy way, where you're seeing each other in each other, rather than just it almost seems like it's being nimshach. It's using the same koach, but in a healthy way. Meaning the Nachash was trying to incorporate this idea of use your imagination, think about think about yourself within yourself. But here, think about the other person within yourself and see them inside of you.
It's a good sushtal. It's a very good sushtal. It's a good point. See the other within yourself is the koach hadimin of kedushin. But this is the ikar is if you take these two Torahs, you put them together, you see that what the AriZal talks in a very Kabbalistic, very dense. Baal Shem Tov takes them very simple. But if you don't know the AriZal, you look at the Baal Shem Tov, it almost sounds like it's okay. It's a nice pshat, But if you understand how the Baal Shem and the AriZal, there's one Torah. You understand that the Baal Shem is the nimshal, is the Torah Sari. He's giving out the nimshal, but he's not taking the mashal. He's just giving the nimshal. You have to know the mashal to understand the nimshal. This is very nice. Where these two Torahs actually are very closely related. Be'ez Hashem, we should have the koyach and this moyach to see this every week. It'd be a nice thing. Not just have that.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You guys are very quiet, so I'm assuming you understood everything.
We were makabel.
Okay, good. Thank you. So
Upon him.
Exactly.
Baruch Hashem.
Dorian, you're in town?
No, I'm in Virginia as usual. Simcha!
Simcha!
It's a family reunion.
Simcha, you're back in New York?
Baruch Hashem, Rabbi. Thank you very much.
All right. You have to come
Just
visit?
temporarily. Yeah, we're coming to visit as soon as we can.
Zev, everyone's temporarily.
Baruch Hashem, this is beautiful Torah.
Zev, you follow along?
Oh, Reb Zev is here.
Is that the only?
Reb Zev
Is there another nimshal that can be taken out of that, or is this like the only way to understand that, to bring it down?
Of course not.
Of course not, right?
Of course not.
So really, like, it contains like more light. He's bringing down like one facet, right? Of
Chassidus is bringing out the oil through Chassidus, but of course. And for example, the Ramchal and others looked at it at a minshal in a different way.
Have a good night.
But you have to figure out your own nimshal. What's your nimshal? That's your homework. You figure out your nimshal.
Simcha.
Basis.
Reb Zev Rosen, we haven't danced since Simchas Torah. Let's all go to Muncie and surprise Rav Pinson.
I mean,
I ruined the surprise.
we could try to find it. Muslim Torah, it's clear, but it's there's just a bunch of people over here. They're kind of funny to talk. I saw
Rabbi, were we actually learning from
oh, you don't have to
one of the Svarim of the AriZal?
We
Like,
were
for
learning
example, if I
from,
get
Shimon
Shem and
Kutin.
Visason, will that?
That's Shem and Sasson. How do you know Shem and Sasson?
Because Rabbi, I've been learning in Eretz Yisrael. Now that was the main sefer we were using to learn Shar Kavanas
Where were you learning?
in the yeshivas Mekubalim
Aha.
by Reb Benyahu.
Daniel?
Benayahu.
You were learning Mamish in the Yeshivas HaMekubalim?
Yeah, Baruch Hashem.
Okay, now it's a fire ticket. It's a whole different simcha then.
Bezras Hashem every day. Please, God, should be a whole different simcha.
Been through a lot.
Is it early in New York? It's early there in California, no?
Yeah,
So it's good for you this time.
it's perfect. It's beautiful. I mean, this was like, yeah. Thank you.
All right,
Very beautiful, very deep, very psychological.